Well, a hearty shalom to you, Jeffrey Seif here, and pleased am I that you're walking with me through the Torah. I'm glad that you're looking at the Torah just yourself, whether you have a guide to get in and out of it, in the form of a person. Hey, I'm glad that I can, jump into that role, but I'm just glad that you care enough even to glance this way. It speaks of impulses resident within you that give value to the biblical text, and the fact that you're working with the Tree of Life version of the Bible as I am, affirms that you find value in this work product that the Messianic Jewish Collective has put together to offer a telling of the text. We are looking at Parashat Korach this week. We're looking starting in Numbers chapter 16, and it's a real tough one. This is where Moses, if you can imagine this, Moses deals with the mutiny on the Bounty. These hotshots get in his face and say, Mo, you're going too far with all this, baby. You're not the only one around here that hears from God. I want to begin just by looking at the text, and I want to reflect with you a little on the nature of rebellion. It's not a good story today, but, we deal with rebellion. There's a lot of angst in culture, a lot of throwing off leaders. Oh, goodness, we live in a world today, we vote. We prop up our leaders and we throw them under the bus in reasonably short order. It is just so common. Well, here we're told in chapter 16, verse 1, Korah, we're told that he was an elite and he gathers together other men of renown. In verse 2, when they rose up against Moses and took 250 men from Bnei Israel, from the sons of Israel, men of renown, who had been appointed to the council. So these were people that were people of means. They were elites in culture. And if you look in verse 3, they assembled against Moses and Aaron and said to them, "You've gone too far. All the community is holy, all of them, and Adonai is with them. Why do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of Adonai? Who do you think you are? You've gone too far. You're not the only one around here that hears from God. We all walk with him too, buddy. Who do you think you are, Moses?" It's kind of nasty. It's a tad bit unbelievable at one level that Moses would have this problem. Now, I'll tell you, the way I usually look at this text when I look at it, and I'm going to adjust it a little bit today. It's one of the benefits of being over 60. You kind of rethink. When I hear about this rebellion, who do you think you are, Moses? We all hear from God. You're not the only man of God that can speak to these issues. I hear that, and I can't help but do it, and you'll forgive me for doing it. I hear that within the context of the kind of chagrin that pastors get. And I get that because I've been in ministry for a long time, and, it's hard to lead a community. A lot of people have different ideas. Well, look, Reverend or Rabbi, who do you think you are? We've prayed and this is what we think. And it really is tempestuous. I was shocked by it all personally. I just couldn't believe how ministers were walking targets. And, I've long said the only way to avoid criticism is to say nothing, be nothing, and do nothing. Then everyone leaves you alone, but you're not really afforded that luxury if you're in leadership. And so pastors just invoke a lot of ire. All leaders do in all vocations. In all social settings, leaders are critiqued mercilessly. And I'm used to it in a religious setting because people give free vent to their disconsternation. It used to be people were a little more respectful toward authority and religious authority too, but anymore today it's less the case. I've long looked at the text where Jesus said, "I am the shepherd and you're the sheep." And if that's the paradigm for pastoring, I thought, well, that's the difference between me and Jesus, because, I've just shepherded cats. They all have a mind of their own and don't necessarily want to follow. And it's been like that in many ways. So when I look at Korah's rebellion, I think of it in the context of not listening to religious authority. And I do that because they make it a religious issue. We hear from God too, Moses, and, you're not the only one around here. Why do we all have to just listen to you? We should be able to vote and weigh in and decide how to do that. Different congregations have polity, means by which decisions are made and how power is shared. And I'm used to looking at this text within the context of my own experiences and the experiences of people I've had conversation with. But I think that's a little lacking. The reason why I say that is, while it's a religious issue here, hey, Moses, we all hear from God, and, why do we just have to listen to you and everything? Here, it's not so much the question of what the church ought to do or what the synagogue ought to do, how we ought to do a worship service. The reason why I say that is all that's mandated, all that's structured, and there's no synagogues back here. And furthermore, when you look at numbers, there's no separation between church and state. The religious leader, that is Moses, superintends the civil, the administrative, the criminal, the health system, the whole 9 yards. And so here the question is, who has legitimate civil authority, not just religious authority? The reason why I say that again is because they're fused together here. In this ancient world, they're separated in modernity, where there's a separation between church and state and synagogue and state. There is no separation here. So it's not just a religious issue, though it's framed in religious language. We all hear from God, and we all should be able to make decisions about what God is saying. It sounds like just a religious contextual issue, communal issue, but it's more than that, because religion was more than that. And I mention that because this is thus broadened to see it's a rejection of civil authority, not just religious authority. And I do think, by the way, that it's a word for our day, principally because we live in a world today where civil authority just gets beat up. Now, let me just kind of play my hand a little bit. I'm a Trump supporter more than I am a dissenter. I mention that because I think we need a guy like him to get in there and shake it up and turn it around. And I know that he's drawn a lot of ire, as any leader would, and people just go after him savagely. But my issue with being reverential towards civil authority is less a defense of Donald Trump's person or even his policies. I was like this when Barack Hussein Obama was the president. And by the way, I was no friend of Barack Hussein Obama. I was no friend. I thought he was a nice enough guy, but I just lived in a different philosophical world, a different religious world, a different social world than he. And so I just drew upon different values and looked at situations through a different lens. And so he was always coming up short in my estimation. Well, not always, but a lot of times. And I would watch people from the religious side of the house just go after him with verve. And, to me, that's just as disconcerting, and I gave voice to it then, as it is when I see my man drawing a lot of fire. And that is, I think there needs to be respect for the office. The office that Moses has here, it's an anointing. He came by it legitimately. He was called into it. He was ordained into it. He was ratified into it. And so it is. And I think we need to give people their due and let them exercise the prerogatives of their office. There are ways that we, in our culture, where there's no monolith that's imposed, we don't live under a dictatorship, we can conversate. Legislators meet, we can banter things around. But I think we need to be reverential toward those whom we appoint as leaders. Even if we don't abide the leader, I think we do well to abide the fact that the person is the leader and be respectful even if we dissent. There's a way to do that. It's one of the things that I like about military culture or police culture where I have experience. It's not a question always of who's right or who's wrong. It's a question of who's who. That is, who has rank. And people deal with each other with respect to that. Let me encourage you to be respectful even in dissenting. In our culture, we're afforded the opportunity to dissent. But there's a way to do that that's gentlemanly. There's a way to do that that's womanly. There's a way to do that where we're not just part of a rabble casting aspersions at someone obnoxiously. So take that to heart. Look at Numbers 16 and read on chapter 2, and you'll see what becomes of those who are minded to foment rebellion. God bless you. Jeffrey Seif here. Thank you for looking my way this day, and I'll see you next week. Ciao.